At 2 a.m., she stood outside her own house, barefoot and wearing only pajamas. The door slammed shut behind her. Her husband had just pushed her out, and standing next to him, wearing one of his shirts, was a woman she had never seen before. The woman looked at her and smiled, like she had won something. She was cold, shocked, and humiliated. The porch light buzzed above her, and she saw lights turning on in nearby houses. The neighbors had heard the shouting. She wanted to scream, cry, or pound on the door, but she didn't. She just stood there, staring at the house she'd worked so hard to buy. He told her to leave. He said it like he owned the place, like she was just some stranger. She looked at him one last time through the window as he walked away with the other woman, laughing like she didn't exist. That's when she smiled to herself. Not because she was okay, but because she remembered something important. He didn't own that house. He never did. The deed, the mortgage, the down payment, it was all hers. Her name, her money, her effort. He must have forgotten that in the heat of his little show. She walked down the steps, not saying a word. She still had her phone in her hand, and her keys. He hadn't even thought to take those from her. As she reached the sidewalk, she made a call, a calm one. Because even though he thought he had kicked her out, the truth was very different. This wasn't the end, not even close. This was just the beginning of something he never saw coming. Let him feel proud for now. Let them enjoy their little moment. Because soon, very soon, he would wake up and find out that the woman he thought he could throw away at 2 a.m. was actually the one holding all the power. And when that moment came, she would be ready. She met him during a time when everything in her life seemed to be falling into place. She had a good job, a strong credit score, and had just been pre-approved for a home loan. He was charming, funny, and said all the right things. He told her he admired her independence, how hard she worked, how smart she was. He said he had big plans too. He just needed some time. She believed him. When they first started dating, he didn't have a steady job, but he said it was just a rough patch. "I've got interviews lined up," he would say. "I'm just between things." She wanted to believe him. She told herself that relationships are about supporting each other, so she paid for dinners, gas, even a few bills here and there. It was supposed to be temporary. When they moved in together, it was her name on the lease. She bought the furniture, paid the deposit, and covered most of the expenses. He helped where he could, but it was never much. "Once I'm on my feet," he'd promise, "things will be different." She never pushed too hard. She didn't want to seem unsupportive. She thought love meant patience. There were little things that bothered her, but she ignored them. He didn't like when she went out with her friends, especially male co-workers. He'd say things like, "You're always choosing them over me," or, "Don't you think it's a little disrespectful?" Slowly, she stopped going out. Then came the questions about her outfits, her phone, her passwords. "Why are you hiding things from me?" he'd ask. She wasn't hiding anything, but somehow, he made her feel like she was. He had several female friends he messaged often. When she brought it up, he called her insecure. "You're being controlling," he'd say. "They're just friends." He'd get angry if she asked questions, but expected her to explain every move she made. She began to doubt herself, her memory, her judgment. He'd twist her words, say she was being dramatic, or that she was remembering things wrong. Every argument ended with her apologizing. She started to shrink. Her confidence faded. She tiptoed around his moods, tried to keep things peaceful. She was still paying for everything, rent, groceries, bills, but he made her feel like she owed him more, like he was the one doing her a favor by staying. Looking back, the signs were all there, the lies, the control, the emotional games. But at the time, she called it love. She thought things would get better. She gave him power because she cared. She didn't realize he was taking everything and giving nothing back. And by the time she did, he had already started planning to replace her. He quit his job again, the third one in less than 2 years. This time, he said it was for his mental health. "The stress is killing me," he said. "You don't want me to burn out, do you?" She didn't. Of course not. She wanted him to feel better, to be okay. So she agreed. She told him to take some time, to rest and focus on himself. She could handle things for a while, just a little while. But a little while turned into months. He stopped looking for work. He stayed home all day, mostly on his phone or computer, gaming, scrolling, chatting. She'd come home after a 10-hour shift and find him exactly where she left him that morning, on the couch, surrounded by dishes and takeout wrappers. The laundry wouldn't be done. The trash would still be full. Dinner would be her job too. When she gently brought it up, he'd snap, "You think I'm lazy. You don't understand what I'm going through." And she would back down. Again. She didn't want to upset him. She started to believe maybe she was being unfair. Maybe he was struggling more than she realized. So she worked more, picked up extra shifts, took freelance jobs on weekends. Their bills weren't going to pay themselves. But the more she gave, the less he seemed to care. He grew colder, irritable. Sometimes he'd barely speak to her. Other times, he'd pick fights over nothing, accusing her of disrespect, of nagging, of not being supportive. She found herself apologizing constantly for her tone, her words, her questions. Even when she hadn't done anything wrong, he twisted things, made her feel like she was impossible to live with, like she was always the problem. She started to question herself, her memory, her feelings, her sanity. If she cried, he'd roll his eyes. If she stayed quiet, he'd accuse her of giving him the silent treatment. There was no winning. Their home, the one she had bought and loved, no longer felt like hers. She avoided certain rooms. She stopped decorating. She no longer played music or lit candles. It felt like she was walking on glass, waiting for the next explosion. And all the while, he stayed online, laughing at memes, messaging people she didn't know, acting like nothing was wrong. She looked in the mirror one day and barely recognized herself. She was tired. Number a shadow of the confident woman she once was. She had given everything to hold them together, and all it had done was break her down. Somewhere deep inside, something whispered that this wasn't love. It was control. It was manipulation. And she was slowly losing herself to it. It happened on an ordinary evening. She came home from work, exhausted, as usual. Her husband was in the shower, his laptop open on the dining table. He rarely left it unlocked, which had always made her feel uneasy. But that day, maybe he forgot, or maybe he thought she'd never dare look. She walked past it at first, then stopped. Something pulled her back. The screen was still lit. A tab open. A dating site. Not just an ad or a pop-up. His actual profile. His face. His name. His carefully written bio. Her heart dropped. She clicked. Messages. Dozens of them. Women flirting. Him replying. Compliments. Emojis. Plans to meet. Some chats went back months. Then she saw the pictures. Selfies he had taken in their home, in their bed. Pictures of women too. Nudes. Dirty messages. Voicemail. She felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. But she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even close the laptop. She stood there, staring, frozen, for a long time. Her fingers trembled, but her mind began to clear in a way it hadn't in years. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. A life he had been living right under her nose. He had been playing her. All the long nights online, the sudden mood swings, the way he turned things around to make her feel like the problem. It all made sense now. He hadn't just been lying. He had been building a double life, using her home, her money, her kindness, while chasing other women like it was a game. Still, she didn't confront him. Not then. She closed the laptop gently and walked away. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay next to him, listening to him breathe, and felt nothing. No love, no hate, just silence. Something inside her had shifted. She knew if she shouted, if she cried, he'd twist it again, make her doubt herself, make her feel like she was overreacting. But this time, she wasn't going to give him the chance. So, she watched, quietly, for days, weeks. She read more messages, took screenshots, collected evidence. She checked their shared accounts, traced where the money was going. She backed up everything, emails, texts, even pictures of their house showing who really owned what. No more excuses. No more hoping things would change. She smiled to herself, but it wasn't out of happiness. It was a decision. The game he thought he was playing was already over. He just didn't know it yet. She didn't waste time. The day after she saw the dating profile and all those messages, she took a long lunch break and walked into a law office. She sat across from a calm, sharp-eyed attorney and told her everything. No crying, no shouting, just facts. The lawyer listened, nodded, and then said something that gave her a strange sense of peace. You've got more power than you think. The house? It was in her name only, bought before the marriage. No co-signer, no shared mortgage. Her family had once advised her to keep it that way, just in case. At the time, she had shrugged it off. Now, she was silently thankful. With the lawyer's help, she got to work quietly. No big moves, no noise, just steady steps. She updated the property deed with extra protections. She separated all her finances. Every bank account in her name was secured. New passwords, new alerts, and even a freeze on her credit. He wouldn't notice right away. That was the point. She installed hidden cameras in and around the house, not to spy, but to protect herself. If things got worse, she wanted proof, real proof, not just his words against hers. She placed them carefully, places he never looked, and she started collecting everything. Screenshots of texts and dating profiles, photos of him with other women when he thought she wasn't watching, notes on every insult, every lie. Every time he tried to turn things around and make her feel like she was losing her mind, she saved it all, on a secure drive, backed up and time-stamped. She told no one. She didn't vent to friends or hint at her plan. She kept her face calm, her voice steady. At home, she still made small talk, still played her part. Let him think he had her right where he wanted. Let him believe she was still the same woman who forgave and forgot. But inside, she was changing. Each step she took made her stronger. Every bit of information she gathered was another brick in the wall she was building between herself and him. He thought she'd never leave, that she couldn't. He was wrong. She wasn't leaving empty-handed. And when the time came, he would learn just how much he had underestimated. She had gone away for work, a short trip, just 3 days. She told him her schedule, told him when she'd be back. He barely nodded, barely listened. She noticed, but said nothing. Her suitcase was packed with files, not clothes. She wasn't going for rest. Just business. She returned a day early. Her meetings ended ahead of schedule, and something inside her told her not to wait. She didn't call, didn't text, just took the evening flight and came straight home. It was late. The lights were off when she stepped inside, quiet. She walked through the hallway, dropped her bag gently by the door, and headed to the bedroom. That's when she saw them. Her husband was in their bed, with another woman. Not just a stranger, not a mistake. The same one she had seen in screenshots. The same face from the photos, the same woman he had told her was just a friend. Her clothes were on the floor, her hair was wet from the shower, and she was wearing one of his shirts, her laundry, her bed, her home. He didn't even look surprised. He sat up slowly, rubbed his eyes like she was the one who had walked into his space uninvited. "Oh," he said casually, "you're back early." The woman didn't say anything, just smirked, like she'd won. She stood there still, not a tear. Not a scream, not a word, just silence. She looked at them for a long moment, then nodded slightly and turned around. She walked out of the room, picked up her bag, and went to the guest room without a sound. He didn't follow. Neither of them did. She didn't sleep that night, but not because of heartbreak. Her hands weren't shaking from sadness. It was something else now, something cold and sharp. Not fear, not defeat. She let them believe they'd beaten her, that she was broken, that she had nothing left to fight with. But they didn't know the locks had already been changed, the finances already frozen, the paperwork already in motion. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to prove anything. She had already won. It was 2 a.m., the kind of silence that makes everything louder, every creak in the floor, every word sharper than it should be. She had been in bed, trying to sleep, when he walked in, angry, loud, saying things he had clearly rehearsed in his head. "You need to leave," he said. She blinked at him, still half asleep. "What?" "You heard me," he said, voice rising. "You're not staying here. Not tonight. Not anymore. You're ruining everything. You're bitter, jealous, and I'm done walking on eggshells around you." Behind him, the mistress stood at the door, arms crossed, wearing a robe that didn't belong to her. She was smiling, calm, confident, like she was watching the final scene of a movie where the villain finally gets what's coming. He gestured toward the door. "Go stay with your mum, or a friend. I don't care, but you're not staying here." She looked down, barefoot, pajamas, no bag packed, her hair still damp from the shower. He didn't care. That was the point. "You're really kicking me out?" she asked softly. He scoffed. "It's my house too." It wasn't, but she didn't argue, not out loud. She walked past them slowly, no rush, no tears, just quiet. She grabbed her phone, her keys, and stepped out onto the porch. The night was cold against her skin. Behind her, the door slammed, locked. The porch light flicked on. Neighbors might have been watching from their windows. She didn't look up. Instead, she walked to the edge of the driveway and dialed a number she'd saved weeks ago. A calm voice answered after one ring. "It's time," she said. That was it. No long explanations, no crying, just 2 words. By the time she got to her car, Her heart was no longer heavy. Her hands no longer shook. This wasn't defeat. This was the moment everything shifted. Inside that house, he was probably laughing, high-fiving his mistress, thinking he had finally won, that she had left without a fight, that she was too broken, too weak, too scared to stand up to him. He didn't know the papers had already been signed, that the sheriff had already been scheduled, that the bank accounts were no longer accessible to him, that the cameras had captured weeks of him shouting, mocking and bragging. He had no idea he'd just kicked out the homeowner, the one with the deed, the proof and the power, and now he'd finally learn what losing really looked like. He woke up late, as usual, probably thinking the worst was over. The house was quiet, the bed warm, the mistress still asleep beside him. He stretched, smug, believing he had finally taken control. Then came the knock. Not a light tap, a firm, official knock at the front door. He opened it, groggy and confused, to find a sheriff standing there, holding paperwork. Behind him a locksmith, a city worker, a process server. "Are you his full name?" the sheriff asked. "Yeah, why?" "You're being served. This is an official eviction notice. You have 10 minutes to gather your things." He laughed, like it was a joke. "This is my house." "No, sir, it's not." The sheriff handed him the papers. Her name, his wife's name, was on every page. Deed, utility accounts, legal filings. He flipped through them with shaking hands. The locksmith was already walking around the side of the house, heading to the back door. The city worker was shutting off the water line. The mistress came into the hallway, wrapped in a sheet, confused. "What's going on?" "You both need to leave," the sheriff said firmly. Then came another paper. This one was different, louder, in a way. It named the mistress as a formal affair partner, listed in the divorce complaint under adultery. It was public now, not just a secret behind closed doors. Her name would be in court records. She gasped. "You said this place was yours." He didn't answer. He tried calling, texting. He left voicemails, angry, then begging, then angry again. But she never responded. She showed up only once, later that day, calm and quiet. Walked through the house with a clipboard and a witness, checking every room. He shouted at her. "You can't do this to me." She looked him straight in the eyes. "I don't live here," she said. "And now? You don't either." Then she nodded to the locksmith. The locks were changed. The door closed behind her. He was left standing outside. No keys, no power, no plan, just consequences. The fallout was fast and brutal. At first, he tried to act like he didn't care, told a few friends she overreacted and made a big deal out of nothing. Said she'd always been controlling and emotionally cold. He even hinted online that she'd been unstable, trying to paint himself as the victim of a bitter, dramatic wife. But the truth had already made it out. She didn't say much, just posted one quiet update, a screenshot of the deed with her name. One line, "When someone kicks you out of your own house, make sure you have receipts." Then came the messages. People she hadn't spoken to in months reached out. Old friends, family, even his relatives. Most of them were on her side. They'd seen the change in her over the years, the silence, the way she started shrinking around him. Now it made sense. Some apologized, some just offered support, but all of them believed her, because she had proof. She never argued, never raised her voice. She simply shared the facts when needed. Screenshots of his dating profile, messages from other women, voicemails, photos, dates, names, all neatly backed up and time-stamped. When he realized people were talking, he panicked. The mistress dumped him within days, said she didn't sign up for this mess, didn't know the house wasn't his, didn't want her name attached to a legal scandal. She blocked him, deleted her social accounts. He tried crawling back, sent long texts full of guilt and false promises, said he missed the life they had, said he could change. She didn't answer, not once. He started spinning more lies, said she cheated, said she set him up, but no one listened. Too many screenshots, too many facts, too many people who'd seen him smirking behind that door at 2 a.m. The shame wasn't just private, it was public now. His friends distanced themselves. His job interviews dried up. People whispered, some laughed, some just looked away. He hadn't just lost her. He'd lost the image he'd worked so hard to build, and all because he forgot the simplest truth of all. She was the homeowner. He was just a guest, one who overstayed his welcome. She stood in the middle of what used to be their living room, now freshly painted and empty. The walls, once covered in old memories and shadows, now gleamed with warm, inviting colors. New floors, new fixtures, new everything. It no longer felt like the place where she'd cried herself to sleep or questioned her worth. It felt clean, Heron. After everything, she didn't stay. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to. She didn't want to walk through those halls and remember the lies, the betrayal, the weight she carried in silence for so long. So, once the final renovation was done and the listing went live, she let it go. The house sold quickly. A young couple bought it, bright-eyed, full of hope. She smiled when she handed them the keys. She didn't mention the past, just wished them peace, laughter, and better memories. With the money from the sale, she cleared every last shared debt and set up her own account, clean, private, safe. Then she booked a one-way ticket and left. No plan, no deadline, just her, a passport, and the freedom to breathe without permission. She traveled light, just a suitcase, and a heart that finally felt like hers again. She visited cities she used to dream about while sitting at her desk during long office hours. She hiked in quiet forests, drank coffee on balconies overlooking oceans. She laughed again, louder and easier than she had in years. People often asked her, "Where's home?" And she'd smile and say, "Wherever I am." She didn't look back much. No need to. The past had taught her what she needed to know. She didn't carry anger anymore, just clarity. She no longer apologized for asking for respect. She no longer made herself small so someone else could feel big. Once, while sitting on a train crossing through Italy, she looked through old photos on her phone, not to mourn, but to remember how far she'd come. And buried deep in her notes app was a line she'd once typed after that night at 2 a.m. "If someone ever tries to take your home from you, make sure they don't know you were the landlord the whole time." She read it again, smiled. He had kicked her out thinking he'd won. But she had owned more than just the house. She had owned the silence, the strategy, the ending, and now she owned her freedom. Do you think she did the right thing by walking away and building a new life? Or should she have stayed and tried to fix what was broken? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you want more powerful, satisfying stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment.